Semifinals shootout. I mean, could we have a better semifinal weekend to bring in our 200th episode of the Fantasy Ruckers Show? I don't think so. No shortage of points over the course of the weekend, but two very different stories. We break down those matches in this week's episode of the Quick Tab Recap and so much more. The Fantasy Ruckers Show starts right now.
Where rugby and the world of fantasy sports collide. Welcome to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, talking all things rugby from the MLR to leagues around the world. We're on top of it. Headphones on, pads off. This is the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Now, here are your hosts, Ryan Yee, Matt Yee, and Devin Vanderpool.
What's up, everybody? This is episode number 200 of the Fantasy Ruckers Show. Thank you so much for Fantasy Ruckers League members, our community members, and everyone else tagging along on this journey of making fantasy rugby a reality in MLR 200. It's hard to believe that we've hit that number, and I wouldn't want to be sharing it with anyone else. Of course, I'm Ryan Yee. With me is North American Rugby Database's James Deeley. And James, to have you on this 200th episode, I think it's very poetic. Very poetic. New era of our programming that we've begun here, and we get to ring in the second century of the Fantasy Ruckers era, or I should say the completion, heading into our third century, I guess, with you here with me on this Quick Tab Recap episode.
Yeah, I don't want to take any credit for it. I mean, I've only, what is it, Quick Tap Recap episode, something like 6 or something, if you want to be like that.
Yeah.
But I've been on probably, I might be in double digits now, I'm not sure. But yeah, congrats Ryan, and to Matt and Vandy as well. That's 200 episodes is a big deal. So good for you guys. Happy to be a part of it now. And maybe for 300, I'll feel a bit better.
Yeah, there we go. Hey, we can keep on counting here. Yeah, here's to 100 more, and it feels like yesterday, man, that we started this thing. And I will say though, James, despite the fact that yes, maybe you not have been on every single one of those 200 episodes, you I think have mentioned before that you have been one of our most frequent guests on this show, and now official co-host with me here on the Quick Tap Recap episode, and this was the start of, I think, our connection here, right? Like when we started this 200 episode, it was also when you and I were first kind of going back and forth here in our journeys of what we were trying to do with us with the Fantasy Ruckers and Fantasy MLR, and you with obviously MLR stats, North American Rugby Database, and everything else. So in a way, you have been there in spirit, if not there physically on each one of these episodes.
Not on video anyway. But yeah, we've been talking for years. I don't know when I started to reach out to you. Probably episode double digits, if not single digits. But yeah, it's cool to see you guys celebrate 200.
Well, hey, what a better way?
Us celebrate 200.
Us, exactly. There we go. Us. That's right, James. It is an us now. But what a better way though to ring in this 200th episode with a cracker of a weekend that we had. Over the past couple days here. Obviously, a little bit shifted with the Sunday match and a Monday match that we had to get a little bit acquainted to, a little bit late as well. But either way, drank a little bit of coffee. Took our Monday night to watch a little bit of rugby. Wasn't a bad thing to kind of tune into that, especially with everything else going on in the sports world.
It was it was a bit rough. I was away at a cottage in the middle of nowhere. Drove back in this torrential rainstorm on Sunday, and then had to stay up till 10 to watch this game. Thankfully, it was a really good game, which we'll get into in a minute. So could keep my attention quite well.
Hey, that's the dedication that is real. But you're right, though. It is a match that we will break down in this episode, along with Monday night's match. Just so much to talk about here, and it really sets up the stage for what should be a very exciting final. So again, on this episode 200, James and I are going to quick tap recap those matches, tell you what we think it tells us for what we can expect here this upcoming weekend in a final that should be fun to watch. We will also hear from Matt and Vandy to bring in the celebrations of this episode number 200 in just a bit as well. And then, of course, we will give our predictions heading into the final and a little special segment here in this finals week as well. The Fantasy Ruckers, we love to partner up with other people that are doing things that we see as a way to grow the game. We've obviously gone through the fantasy avenues to help do that, and we know that Scrummy has been a platform that a handful, I should say, more than a handful of people have been trying out for the first time this year. They share those values and trying to use fantasy as an outlet to help grow the game. And we got a fun little challenge here coming up here at the end of the show to talk about what we can expect here coming up in the final, and maybe some extra incentive here to get on board here on that Scrummy app to maybe compete against myself, James, and maybe some other special people here as we head into the last week of Major League Rugby. So, lots to talk about here on this episode. Before we get into it all, though, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. If you're watching on the YouTube video, you can find those handles up above in the video, down below in the description. If you're listening on the pod, drop us a rating as well. It's been a fun ride here in MLR 2026. Of course, join the Discord community. You can find James there as well. And check out the fantasyruckers.com, the official platform for Fantasy MLR here on the Fantasy Ruckers Show. While you're on there, also go to the North American Rugby database. That is James's baby that he's been working and curating for a long, long time. I've said it plenty of times. Most comprehensive North American rugby database. It's the name that you'll find anywhere out there. Check him out on socials as well, at MLR Stats, at NA Rugby DB, and of course at Jam Delay. All right, no further time to waste. Let's get right into a quick tap recap.
Quick Tap Recap.
All right, quick tap recap, episode 200. Why not break not just one record when it comes to most total points scored? Let's break two. And I opened up the show in our teaser, James, talking about how, yes, these are two matches that broke the all-time record for most points, most total points in a playoff match. However, both of these matches, though, telling completely different stories in how we get to that point. Do you agree with that sentiment?
No, absolutely. I mean, you only have to look at yes. To start with, they both broke the record for the highest scoring playoff game, 77 points and then 81 points. The league posted something about it, and I'm not sure they would have known if I hadn't put something out it. But that's a side point. They are very, very different. You only have to look at kind of the margin of victory in each game to know what was going on. What was it, 9 points in the first game and then 37 after a few consolation scores in the second? Like, they were completely different animals. And we'll get into it, but one team was very obviously the best team of the four.
Yeah, no kidding about that. Well, let's start off though with the one that obviously happened first on Saturday or Sunday, I should say. Late night matchup though, West Coast clash between the Seattle Seawolves and California Legion at Starfire. California coming away with the big time victory, 43-34. An interesting match, and I think one that is going to be fun to discuss between you and I, James, because at the beginning, quite close, right? It's back and forth. You can see that there was an emphasis, I think, on the game plan of kicking that kind of started off here, started a little bit slow, defensive battle, some discipline that came through here, which we'll get into, and then kind of blew wide open there in the tail end of the second half, where California started to do California Legion type things, and obviously they end up on top. Let's start from the beginning, though. 16-16 at half, really low scoring affair here in those first 40 minutes. And it did feel like these were two teams that were kind of trying to get into their groove to see how they were going to maybe in either way or form start pulling away.
Yeah, I mean, what was it? Well, first of all, I have to say I feel vindicated in my tinfoil hat take from last week to say that the Chicago Legion, I keep calling them Chicago Legion. I've done it all year. I'll get it eventually. The California Legion actually didn't have anywhere to play, so didn't want home advantage for the playoffs. That's why they lost the last game. That's my conspiracy theory. They come up, they beat the Seawolves in Seattle. The Seawolves were something like 21 wins from the last 24 at Starfire. Then the California Legion took it to them, take the victory. But it really was, I think this game is kind of defined by the battle of the kickers.
Yeah.
Definitely in that first half anyway. There was only one try from Joey Mano,
Hmm.
but it was Davy Kurtzer against Kobe Milne, I think was really the story. And both of them were absolutely lights out, to be honest. I mean, I can't imagine scoring 19 points in a playoff game and losing. Poor
Yeah.
Davy Kurtzer.
No, no kidding. And I mean, interestingly, both those guys, first time players on their respective teams, right? Davy Kutzer coming
Mhm.
in, that shows the impact that a player like him can have. And you mentioned 19 points. Yeah, going to get one up there by Kobe Milne, who this is exactly what they I don't want to say we're expecting, but when you bring in a guy like Kobe Milne with the pedigree that he has, with the super rugby experience that he has on playing in top tier rugby and being in these moments before,
Yeah.
23 points, 9 from the tee. This is what bringing a guy like Kobe Milne can do. And I feel like, especially from the fantasy sense, like on our side, like it felt like Kobe Milne was kind of under the radar for most of the year. Nothing really crazy explosive, was very consistent when it came to his appearances and just
Hmm.
being that stable force for California all season long. And I don't want to call this his breakout match that because he's been impactful all year long, but this is the match where he puts the stamp on it, and it's like, okay, this is why, again, that we saw the potential in Kobe Milne and what he could do. Everyone talks about the Gonzalo Bertranus. Everyone talks about the Billy Meekses and some of the marquee names. Kobe Milne's not a guy that we've been raging about all season long. Yet this is the match where you can't do anything but talk about Kobe Milne.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And I think if kicks from the tee were part of fantasy this season, then everyone will be talking about Kobe Milne, I think,
Sure,
because
sure.
they were he's been remarkably consistent, like you said, but kind of under the radar, with the exception of his place kicking. He was the top scorer pretty much all season. He was the first player to cross 100. 9 from 9 is an MLR record for the highest number of kicks without missing in a game, and 9 successful kicks is a record in itself for MLR. I mean, it's only AJ Alatimu, Sam Malcolm, and now Kobe Milne have done that. Um, and that's not including his pair of 50-22s, his just absolutely brilliant game management, and his partnership with, we talked a lot about David Kurt. Well, there's been a lot of talk throughout the season about David Curtis's partnership with Andre Warner, having come both from the Sabercats. But Bertranu and Milne are just sensational as well. Very kind of different playing styles, I think, but they kind of opposites attract, I think, in this case, and they really, really complement each other. And it was just lights out. He was player of the match for good reason. He was absolutely sensational.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how could you not be when you score more than 50% of your team's points
Yeah,
in
a
a
playoff
match?
record, most points in a playoff game. Like,
Eh,
funnily enough, I think David Kurtzer would have broken that record if not for Kobe Mill. Just
yeah, and
insane. Like,
even more incredibly to do that at Starfire, right? Like away
yeah,
from home
yeah,
for
yeah.
one, and then to do it at Starfire is another. And
Hmm.
we'll get into kind of what that shows us about California that, let's be honest, is going to be going into hostile territory again this coming weekend here in the final, with is going to be I don't even want to call it a pseudo home game. It is going to be a home match for Chicago, with the final
Well, it
being
is. Yeah.
Chicago. But either way, though, for Kobe Milne to do that there, I think bodes a lot of confidence here heading into this weekend. Nonetheless, though, I think that's a great encapsulation of what the first half looked like. The one
Hmm.
thing, though, I want to talk about the first half before we kind of transition into the second half, which I think this in itself is kind of that transition, is that red card. Rhino Herbst
Hmm.
going in there, I believe at the what, like the 36th minute, I think I want to say,
Something like
booked
that. Yeah.
with the red card for unmitigated head contact. Correct. Kind of being a little bit reckless, heading into that ruck and trying to contest that. I've seen argument or I've heard arguments on both sides in terms of whether the red card was deserved, whether it was not. Either way, I think what you can definitively say is that Rhino Herbst did put himself in a situation where there was going to be even that judgment call, right? Like it was a penalty. Whether or not it deserved or didn't deserve a red card, I think that's a different story. But again, when you're in a semifinal match, you got to be head on a swivel and you can't be reckless like that to even put yourself in a position where you give a chance for officiating to come into play to make a discretionary call on whether it's a yellow or in this case a red.
Yeah, I mean, one sec. Uh, I have seen the same thing that you were saying, like the debate around whether there was actually head contact or whether there wasn't. But at the end of the day, I mean, I texted one of my mates this. If you're charging a dead ruck, which the referee
Mhm.
called it dead, if you're charging a dead ruck at speed from distance with a tucked arm, you're asking for trouble. I
Yeah,
mean, whether there
exactly.
was head contact or not, up for debate. I think there probably was. I benefit of the doubt goes to the professionals in the middle, the referees.
Mm.
But I mean, it's asking for trouble. And it's a guy as experienced as Rhino Herbs too. He's actually also the most, I wouldn't say sanctioned, but he has the most cards for Seattle. Uh, it's just, is it unfortunate to get dinged for that? I don't really think so. It was quite obvious. I do think it probably is a red card, but the Seawolves outscored the Legion
Right,
down a
exactly.
man.
That's exactly what I wanted to get into. So again, the argument you can have it, but I think we're both in agreement. I think a lot of people need to take a step back, and just maybe realize that hey, either way on how it was officiated or decided on, you put yourself in that situation. Again, in a
I think
semifinal, can't do that.
I
Now, the
think with
flip
this,
side,
so this is somewhere where I'm sure Seattle fans would wish that there was a bunker review, like in test matches. Give them a
right?
yellow out for bunker review, and that can handle that. But we
Yeah.
don't have that.
Either way, though, you look at the red man down for the next 20 minutes.
Mhm.
And I will point to the tweet that you sent out during the match that during the red card, Seattle Seawolves actually outscored the California Legion 14-7. And in fact, when you look at how that match was playing out, they weathered the storm. So I mean, at
Yeah,
the end of
they
the
did.
day,
They came
a
out on top.
moot point. Like we can again go back and forth and argue about whether or not it was the right call. Coming out of that red card with I guess what, like 30 minutes left to play.
Mhm.
Um, the Legion were, or I should say, the Seattle Seawolves were leading and had the lead at that point, leading 26-23 with less than 30 to play. So you're
Mhm.
basically at square one, and you can put that red card in the rear view mirror. And now we'll get into the point where this is where kind of California kind of came through here and started doing California things.
Yeah, and I think it's just to finish up on the card. I think it's I can't remember, so I apologize whether it's Alicia Washington or Bree Kim who says sometimes when you're a man down, it really gives the players who remain on the pitch like an extra 5-10%. I wonder if that's the case now,
Mm.
or in this game, I should say, because you're right. They came out on top. They basically reset the scoreboard when they returned to 15 men. Now, obviously, you're not going to have Rhino Herbst in there. He's got 80, 90, whatever it is, MLR caps. Um, but who came on for him? Khaleesi Moli. He's a good player he was brilliant for the Utah Warriors last year. And you're up. So what happened then, which is what we're going to touch on now, is the California Legion started doing California Legion things, and it kind of touches on something that you mentioned. I think it was a few weeks ago, Ryan, in that when the Seattle subs start to come on,
Mm-hmm.
they could not hold or could not maintain that momentum. I can't remember what game you mentioned it for, but
Yeah.
you did mention it a few weeks ago, and I just don't think that they have the depth.
And that's been the story all season long, right?
Yeah,
Obviously, we can point to Seattle dealt with, I would say, the probably the most injury bad luck this
definitely.
year. You talked about guys that they brought in that they were expecting to make a huge impact, whether that's Mark Bennett, whether that's Harrison Matayo, guys that were going to be
Mhm.
your regular starters. Now, that aside, yeah, you start bringing on some of those subs and California, and it's interesting because some of these guys that they bring on are not necessarily guys that when you look at on paper that should be that big of a drop off, right? And in fairness, the Legion actually made that comeback before really any of those subs. They just really put the nail in the coffin as some of those subs came on. Now you can point to, Davy Kutzer coming off and Dorian Jones coming on. The swap in JP Smith and Andre Warner, but JP Smith has been on the scene. Like these are guys that have made an impact before. So it's interesting to kind of look at that point. Either way, though, there's no other team in all of Major League Rugby that within the span of 20 minutes can make okay, I don't want to say no other team because the Chicago Hounds is a team that could that can do that. But this has been the identity of the California Legion, where if they're in striking distance,
Mhm.
they can turn the Jets on and it can flip on its head in an instant. And 60th minute mark and on feels like that's exactly what happened. And the California Legion were just able to build this momentum, stick with it up until the 60th minute, and just start to kind of pile on those points. Now, give Seattle credit. They kept it competitive towards the tail end, but it really just ended up being California feeling like, hey, this is their time to shine here, and they're going to book their ticket to the final.
Yeah, I mean, I think Seattle did take their chances when they got them. I mean, there was two tries from McLean. They were both pretty good, but really it was California doing California things, but actually kind of building a good platform to attack, and they were the dominant force in that last 35 minutes. I mean, you mentioned that some of the subs didn't hadn't actually occurred before that kind of comeback, as it were, but you look at some of the subs that Seattle made in the last few minutes, and it's Ezekiel Lindenmuth. There's a prop in there who's played 70 minutes. He's
Yeah,
probably gassed for 20 minutes before that.
yeah,
Um,
true, true.
there's JP Smith comes on with 4 minutes left. There's, David Kurtzer comes off with 5 minutes left. Like those guys are probably exhausted
Hmm.
10 minutes before that. Now I get we wanted to keep those caliber of players in it for a playoff game, but why are they playing that much? They're probably gassed. I
That's a
mean,
good point.
this is a high tempo playoff game against a very, very high tempo side
Yeah,
that like to exhaust their opposition. And I think it comes down to something I've said a few times on here is Alan Clark loves his guys to a fault. And I think the problem is that he loves his guys, and behind his guys isn't really anything.
yeah,
So I think that came to bite them in the end. The Legion, they seem to just kind of maintain that momentum as the subs came on. I mean, you look, Ronan Murphy came on and almost immediately scored a try.
sure.
Um, you you just have less drop off for the Legion than you do for the Seawolves.
Great point, because I mean I'm not going to count the Khaleesi Moli sub because that one was necessary,
Mhm.
obviously, to replace Rhino Herbst. The California Legion make one, two, three, four subs, five subs before the Seattle Seawolves make even one, not including the Rhino Herbst exchange, obviously due to the red card. So I think that just proves your point even more. Either way, though,
And the
again,
Seawolves had two unused subs, one of which is a prop. Like you've
yeah.
got a prop playing 70 minutes, another prop playing the full 80. What's going
At
on?
the end of the day, in my opinion, I do think that the better team, at least the team that I thought should be going to the final, won this match and is going to the final.
I think so too. Now, at the start of the season, I probably based on just roster
Yes.
construction, I would have said Chicago against Seattle probably should have been the final. But I think based on this season, despite the
Yeah.
5-5 record, which is weird to think about, I think
Hmm.
the California Legion do deserve to be fighting for the Shield.
Agree as well. I will say the last note before we move on to the next game here is, and we'll talk about this more when we get into our predictions and a kind of a quick tap review, I guess, on the final to come up this weekend. I think it is a huge um, chip to put on here on the table for the California Legion, that they show the ability to win in a place that is very hard to win in, because that is exactly what they are going to do in Chicago this coming weekend, right? Or at least are going to be trying to do. We talked about Kobe Milne being able to do that, but I think as a whole, the California Legion proved that they are able to stay resilient. There's something about playing in hostile territory and the way you need to win those matches. And the way that they did this in terms of being able to not allow Seattle to run away with it, build that momentum, because it can run away from you real quick, right? Obviously the red card helps a little bit, but as soon as Seattle starts building some scoring in Starfire, let's say in that first half or even coming out of that second half,
Mhm.
and gets it a little bit further out of distance than what the California Legion did this past weekend, that's when it starts to run away. But the California Legion didn't allow that to happen. And that's exactly what they're going to have to do in Chicago, if not even at a more emphasis, obviously, because with how good the Hounds are. So I do want to add that I think it is a big tip of the cap to the California Legion for them to show that in a place that is going to be just as hostile as SeatGeek Stadium this weekend, if not a tad bit more, obviously because the final stakes. It is a big thing that California was able to show that they can win away from home, despite your conspiracies, James, that they may not have had a home had they ended up hosting
I
the
think
semifinal either
maybe
way.
it's an advantage that they haven't had a home this year. That they've always been
Maybe.
playing on what feels like a road
Hey.
game. They had one game in LA, which is technically their headquarters, but like
Mm.
they're used to playing on the road. I don't know,
Yeah,
but to
there
but
you
to do it
go.
in Starfire in a playoff game is something else. I mean, Seattle Seawolves, this is their sixth postseason. They've won more playoff games in it. They've won more games than any other team. They are a formidable team in the postseason, and credit to California. They went in and they delivered when it counts. There was two games back to back. They won the important one.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. 43 to 34 again for the California Legion, 77 total points in what was, I would say, a very fun affair to watch. Again, back and forth in that first half, pretty close for a majority of the game, and then California kind of sealing the stamp there in those tail end 20 minutes. But everything you would want in a semi-final match. Again, 77 total points. Can't complain about that. But 24 hours later, completely different story. More points though. 81 scored between the Chicago Hounds and Old Glory DC. And I would say for those 81, you can thank in large part to Chicago Hounds being utterly dominant. 31 to 3 at half. DC does not score their first try until the 54th minute. The score final is 59-22. Even that is probably reflecting a scoreline that is a little bit closer than what it could have been, especially with DC scoring a majority of those points in the latter moments of this
Hmm.
match. I don't know how to break this match down because all I can say is what we've been saying all season long about how good the Chicago Hounds team is. And if you do not put your best foot forward in a match of this magnitude,
Hmm.
especially, this is what Chicago is going to do.
Yeah, I mean, it is difficult to say really anything about this that hasn't been said already.
Yeah.
Um, but this game really should have come with a content warning because this was utter domination and oh glory. Believe it or not, they scored first. But beyond that, like this was an obliteration,
Yeah.
a,
Well,
a decimation, whatever you want to call it. I mean, like you mentioned, Ryan, 55 odd minutes before DC even gets across the try line, by which time the game's pretty much done already.
yeah.
I argue, it was pretty much done at halftime. Scored 22 points, DC. What was that? 12 of those came in the last 5 minutes when Chicago Hounds was already basically gone. All right, there you go. We're done.
Yeah.
Like, it was 59-10 with 10 minutes to play. Like,
Mm.
this is utter domination. I don't know. I don't have anything else to say about it.
Uh,
What I will end with is that every time we seem to say or question the Hounds, they deliver a performance like this. Remember a
Fair
few
enough.
weeks ago when we were saying, "Oh, you know what? I think Seattle might actually have it against the Hounds."
Yeah.
Then they beat them 57-17.
Yeah.
This year, this time going into it, we're like, "Well, listen, DC have given them a bit of trouble in both their regular season matchups. 59-22. Like
Right.
every time any tiny bit of doubt creeps in, they just go, "Remember us?" Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't
It.
think a team has put on a more complete performance this season. I would question whether a team has put on a more complete performance ever in MLR. They played the California Legion kind of rugby. They played
Yeah.
the defensive, grinded out rugby that actually DC excel at against DC. There was a goal line stand that they had, and then they won a penalty from it. Probably already up 30 points, and they were ecstatic. The Hounds were ecstatic about it. They were not letting DC anywhere close to that Shield game. They knew that
Yeah.
they were playing for, first of all, to get a place in the final, but to play in front of their home fans. And I don't think this is a tweet I put out is I don't know what DC was supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're the Swiss Army knife of MLR this season, right? They literally any trick in the bag that you can think of in terms of how are we going to formulate a game plan, like the chameleon, like you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like they can mold themselves into whatever they need to, and that is the most dangerous skill set or
Hmm.
characteristic a team can have in any sport, let alone in rugby, in any competition, especially in MLR, where you're facing
Yeah.
basically the same five teams throughout the entire year and not a big roster of competition. So you can build these game plans and it doesn't need to stray away that far. But the Chicago does it at the utmost elite level this season, especially. And I will double down on this. I get it. The landscape is different. The teams are different. The parameters are different. But I mean, it's hard to argue
You
right now that this is
you
not
can
the
only
best team that
you can only play
we
what's in front of you, man. Like
right. This I think is the best team that we've seen in all of MLR. Like it is just it's incredible, incredible. Either way, again,
we could be everyone's going to forget this if they don't win next week. Let's just
sure.
remember that. But
But you feed that level of dominance. You just said it, James. They're gonna come up
the
and put a 60 burner next week.
the um the weapons that they have at their disposal, they have crossfield kicks to Noah Brown. They have this ridiculous solo effort from Peyton Wall. They've got, you know, breaks from the heavy guys like Kinevac's try. They've got rolling more like Fury. They've got close range scraps like Rumble's try. They've got interceptions like that. Like they can score from everywhere, and they often do.
Yeah.
And I think that they are, there's a lot to be said to before we said about California doing California things. Chicago do it better. At least they
Yeah.
did this week.
Yeah. No doubt about that. It's everything this season has been a caveat. Anything we've said about any single team, it's always like, but
But
Chicago,
the
right?
Hounds are there. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're right. You're right.
exactly. I do though want to touch a little bit on the DC side of things.
Hmm.
First takeaway from this is I do think this emphasized the teardrop that we had in our league. I think obviously the Chicago Hounds were in a tier of their own, but I do think the drop off, even in an injury riddled Seattle Seawolves team and a California Legion team to the DCs and then the Free Jacks and Anthem, was a pretty big drop off with that. I think that fourth place team that was going to be coming into here was going to have a struggle of having any chance of getting to a final, let alone
Hmm.
hoisting the shield at the end of the season. This kind of reaffirmed that to me. And I will add then to the flip side of it, and to further emphasize kind of how everything needed to go perfect when you go into a match without your best player, that is Jason Robertson. Um, I mean, you throw your hands up, right? Like it not only emphasized to me the drop off of DC, but the drop off without their best player. Jason Robertson, to me, is everything that DC needs in terms of any
Yeah, and
chance of being successful.
it proved how much of a talisman he is. And let's be clear, he returned home to New Zealand because his partner's expecting the birth of their first child. Pretty good excuse, but I mean, he is just such a talisman for that Old Glory side, and
Yeah.
it's nobody's fault that he's not there. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
They really missed him. And Jason Emery is a good player. He's a Swiss Army knife in himself, but he's played very limited minutes. He's won a Shield, but he's played very limited minutes this season. And I think this was his first start at 10. He can play center, fullback. Hasn't really played 10 in quite a while, and it was a very big ask for him. And I think the Hounds picked up on that. They flattened him a few times,
Yeah.
but it was always going to be an uphill battle for him and for DC because as in rugby it tends to be as the 10 goes, the team goes. But that wasn't the only omission. I don't know if you caught it the very very last minute, but Cali Martinez withdrew
Hmm.
their Rugby Canada capped starting prop. So Liam Fletcher had to come in very late in the day to kind of fill in for the scrum. And Liam Fletcher last year played for the Hounds. So the Hounds had the lowdown on this guy
Yeah.
anyway. Their scrum was struggling against the Hounds, and I think it was always going to be honest. But Cali Martinez, I think, could have at least held his own.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were on the back foot before the game even started.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess that just emphasizes, right? And I don't think any other team can say they can do this. Again, bad luck for DC. I don't want to say bad, but like obviously congratulations to Jason Robertson. Obviously, hey,
Yeah,
more
yeah.
than valid. I don't want to say bad luck with any of that. It's not like it was, but again, just mistimed kind of circumstances that obviously is at the detriment of DC. And to be frank with them, they and Simon Cross kind of alluded that they had the recipe to do that, and they showed it during the regular season that they could. They just obviously didn't have the ingredients. Jason Robertson being a key ingredient of that to get to that point. And to be frank, any other team that loses that best player, you could say if Legion didn't have Milne, similar outcomes would be happening with them in their playoff run, right? If Davy Kutzer isn't with the Seawolves, similar thing happening with them as well. The only team that you can point to that wouldn't be the case is the Chicago Hounds.
Yes.
Even
Yeah.
if Christopher Hilsenbeck was not playing. Okay, let's put in Reese Botha, who has looked solid as a starter, but it's okay. Even if Reese Botha isn't at tip-top performance or form, oh, we also have Santiago Vidal that has played 10 before that can kick well, that we've seen in the
Who's
league be a difference
Chile's
maker.
all-time national points
Right.
leader. And I think Ben Holden mentions on the broadcast, no one went for him in the offseason. I thought he was one of the best
Blows my
pickups
mind.
of the
That
season, maybe with the
that's what I
exception of
thought.
Webster. But
Yeah.
like, no one went for Videla, and I remember seeing that signing and being like, "Oh, they're not fucking about this year. They are."
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
played a depth role because he hasn't needed to play anymore. And
Yeah.
we mentioned they crushed the Seawolves a few weeks ago, the Hounds. Botha started at 10 then.
Yeah.
Like they can there's no drop off for the Hounds. They could
Which
have done it with anyone. Unfortunately, you're absolutely right in saying 5 teams out of 6, if they lose their starting fly half,
right.
it's going to be
And
tough.
that's why I say like I don't think we can take what Chicago's doing for granted in terms of that this
Mhm.
being normal. It's not normal because like you mentioned, 5 out of 6 teams, if they dealt with what DC was dealing with, it would be the same story. So again, to DC's credit, um, again, scoreline obviously not the one, but again, a lot of things working against them, and you're playing a team that is a unicorn in terms of performances this season. Again, the only undefeated team in the history of Major League Rugby, and they'll look to continue that winning run here in the upcoming finals. So again,
Yeah,
final
the
59-22 here for the Chicago Hounds. So that story, a semifinal shootout story, the Triple S, leads us to what is going to be a fun Father's Day weekend for a lot of people heading down to Chicago. James, you're heading to Chicago.
I
I've got
am.
a little fun stretch in there. Wish we could be joining you down there. Obviously, logistics playing a role in that, but you will be our boots in the ground to tell us everything about how things go and what it's like. We'll obviously be tuning in from the broadcast, and then you and I will obviously break it down next week in the outcome. But just want to give that a shout to anyone listening to the pod. Hey, if you see James Deeley of the North American Rugby Database, don't hesitate to go up and say hi and let him know all the great things that he's doing. And of course, I know
Or not
James
so
is
great.
going to
You
be
know,
excited.
I can take the criticism. No, it should be great. Please come and say hi. I will probably be in an Arrows jersey because I've got to rep them, especially with the Hounds there. I mean, my captain is playing. Got to rep him, and yeah, please come say hi. I'm going to be at pretty much all as many of the festivities as I can be at, so I'll be around.
And I'll say that when we were able to go out to the finals last year in
Hmm.
Pawtucket, absolute blast, right? Like I think
Yeah,
what was the most fun thing about it was like this was the first time that we were meeting a lot of people in person that we've been talking with for a
yeah.
very long time. James was the first time that we got to meet in person. I can go down the list. John Payne
Mhm.
of Jack's Rangers was the first time we met him. Rugby 100 Club. Bill Baker, we hosted a show together, hadn't met in person before that. Like, and just all the other people that came out to say hi. There's one of my favorite pictures of all time, both from the Fantasy Ruckers sense, but just personally overall, was that picture that we got to take at the
Was
final
that
with all of
at
us
halftime?
there at halftime was so awesome to see. So if Chicago is even anything close to what we were able to experience in Pawtucket, the people going out to the Midwest there are going to have a blast. And yeah, James will be there to say hi. We'll be there in spirit with James. I don't know if we can like what can we get like a little like strap on like
You want me to get
FaceTime
a
thing that we can
GoPro?
put. Yeah, exactly, and we'll be there in spirit there for you. But either way, though, going to be a blast. Make sure you say hi to James and yeah, everyone heading out to Chicago. Have a fantastic time because we know how fun those finals weekends can be. All while we say thank you, a big thank you to all the fathers out there for obviously what they do. Hey, a pretty good Father's Day gift if you want to get out to Chicago to catch out a final, which lends itself to our conversation. We're gonna have a little bit of a special segment here, quick tap review. Obviously, James will be shipping out to Chicago, so we got to get all
Hmm.
these predictions, all this breakdown in here now. Obviously, Maddie and I will be on later this week to break down the final in more depth here in our Rucking Rundown episode, but want to get James' perspective. James, I guess I'll leave it simply for a question like this because, again, we've been raving around Chicago. I think a majority of people are going to have Chicago winning this match, lifting the shield at season's end. How does that story change in any shape or form with California maybe playing villain and throwing a wrinkle in that?
I I get the impression between California and Chicago. First of all, get out of the way. If it's raining, which it doesn't seem to be, then Chicago will take it easily because California can't play in the rain. But if it's assuming it's nice, hopefully it will be lovely and sunny. I get the feeling there might not be too much defense played.
Mm-mm.
Um, the problem with that is that Chicago like to do that. California can be a bit, they can just outscore you. You know, if you score 40, we'll score 45.
Yeah.
But the Hounds don't like to play that. They'll say, well, we'll score 50 and you'll score 10. Like, so I really don't know. I also don't think that, I think that because it's a final, everything's going to be a little tighter, a little kind of players may tense up a bit sooner. You know, I don't know if that's going to lend itself to more mistakes or less risks. Um, I do think the Hounds are going to take it because I'd be stupid not to bet against that. Stupid to bet against that, rather, because they've given me absolutely nothing to doubt them all season.
Mm-hmm.
They did take the first two meetings against Chicago, against California.
Mm-hmm.
Um, their latest meeting was a bit closer, was a 10-point win. I think it might be something along those lines again, maybe between 8 and 12 points, a margin of victory. I'm going to say 34 to 46 to Chicago.
Okay. Rugby wrap-ups, Matt McCarthy's rugby odds has the line, at least they're predicting, as Chicago being 8-point favorites here, which I think is a great line. I think the margin has been slimming down, obviously, every time these teams have met. The way I put it, James, there are many ways I see this Chicago team winning this final on Sunday. There is one way I see California coming away with a
Are you going
win,
to
and
say the
that in
line? Say
itself,
your
and,
line.
and that in itself, right, is explains to me why there's just so much faith in Chicago completing this dream season that they've been having. Now, aside from the rain that you mentioned, I guess California fans will be doing their rain dance all weekend long. There is a 75% chance right now that it is raining in Chicago on Sunday.
Really? Oh, that's
So
interesting.
just put that out there right now. Obviously, this is just a quick Google search, but between 11 and 8 p.m., there is a 75%. So it'll be wet at the very least, most likely. Maybe it clears out as the game continues on, or even by. But again, this is a week out, and weather can change in instantaneous.
When's
That aside,
kick off 7 o'clock, is it?
I think, isn't it 8 o'clock? I think it's 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock kickoff. So
Is
it
it 8
might.
o'clock East and 7 o'clock local? I can't remember.
Oh, that's true. I think, well, now we're getting into it because I don't know if that, I believe this is local for me on Google. So I would say it's the same thing. So it looks like the rain is supposed to stop around 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock our time, which is the same time as kickoff, which is 7 o'clock local time. Either
8
way.
o'clock. It's 8 o'clock local. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So either way, let's put the rain aside. I think the only way, that one way that I see California winning this is doing, again, what I've said all season long and what I've been saying is the way that California does it, is by just scoring a whole bunch of points. But I do think that they are going to have to try to hold Chicago to under 30 for them to have any shot at doing this. If it's a punch back and forth, Chicago is going to punch you right back in the mouth, right? Like California is going to have to pull away and then show some of that defense that maybe they were showing at times in the DC game that we saw, where they're holding them up within the 22, and try to hold Chicago to 30 points or less. Now, that's a big ask because Chicago has not scored below 30 points all season long.
Yeah, the closest team to come to that was Anthem.
Yes, yes, and they had to what? They also scored a whole bunch of points in that as well. So either way, I think that's the one way to do it. My final prediction is, of course, aligned with you, James. Chicago wins this 42 to 33, a 9 point difference there. So I do think it's going to be high scoring fair. The rain may change that, but I think to your point, Chicago has shown nothing for you to even doubt them an ounce in this. You add to that it may be raining. You add to that they're playing at SeatGeek, their home that they've been an absolute fortress in all season long. Everything, every possible thing is working in their favor here leading up into this weekend. The only caveat that I can think is that, okay, California won in Starfire. Maybe they can put a wrinkle in it and play a spoiler
Uh,
here at SeatGeek. But
I don't know. I
um,
don't think SeatGeek is as much as a fortress. My one example is that the 2023 Toronto Arrows won at SeatGeek. Yeah, one win of the season was at SeatGeek.
yeah,
Now this
it's
this was early days in Chicago Hounds. Now this is going to be very different for a final, obviously. But
yeah,
I don't know. I don't think anything matters, to be honest.
I know,
I
I know.
think
And
Chicago are just incredible. If they do not win this, there will be a cataclysm, I think, in Chicago.
I mean, they'll go like the episode that we can have on episode 202 next week in this finals recap. It can go two of which ways. Obviously, 99.9% of that is going to be us sitting here saying the same thing we've said all season long about how good the Chicago Hounds
Mm.
team is. Content wise, it'll make it spicy if Chicago falls short here because you could maybe then start talking about the biggest flop in all of the ML history of the MLR in terms of
I can
expectation.
talk about the curse of first again. It strikes again. But
Uh,
listen. You're right. Chicago are heavy favorites in this. California are a good team. There is a reason why we play the game still.
yes,
You
yes.
never know.
Anything is possible. It's never over until it's over, and we find out this Sunday in Chicago at SeatGeek in the rain at the home of the Chicago Hounds, who are going to be very favorited in this. You see where I'm going with it? I'm saying everything except them actually winning the match, but we'll find that decided until this weekend. Either way, both James and I going Chicago in this one. All right, let's wrap up the show with a special segment here. The Fantasy Ruckers partnering up with Scrummy here for the championship week.
TFR Betting Challenge.
All right, TFR betting challenge, and boy, do we have a betting challenge for you. Get on Scrummy, play the championship week with us, and see if you can take down the first overall ranked team in the first season of Scrummy, in the first season that we've been doing this. 83.9 points in the semifinals is good enough for fifth. But hey, we've been running away with it all season long, the Fantasy Ruckers team, in terms of this new game. And I wouldn't say, James, that it would be anything but expected for us to be somewhat decent at a fantasy game. To say that we are ranked first out of almost 4,000 people may have been something that even we couldn't have predicted. But either way, we put our Fantasy Ruckers skills to the test here, what we've been learning over these 5 years, and it seems to have paid off.
Yeah, I mean you're running away with it. What is it? You're 55 points ahead of everyone. There's only two people above 900, and you're over 950. Like it would be concerning if you guys weren't in the lead, to be honest. But I mean, I don't think I can catch you. I'm over 100 points behind you, down in lowly third. But we'll see. I might be
We'll
able to
see.
get
Hey,
into
anything's
second.
possible here. And hey, we're just hitting the reset button. Yeah, we can talk about the overall
Yeah,
rankings, but this is the championship. We're gonna
yeah, yeah.
see and put the money where the mouth is in terms of these two teams here. I will want to give a shout out to Bucky Rugger 2 on Scrummy, who
Mhm.
is CJ Rugger on our Discord and in our Fantasy Ruckers
Oh,
leagues.
that's who that is.
He is also a fantasy MLR champion, or in this one as well in the Fantasy Ruckers League. So not surprising to see him being the other 900 plus point scorer in this one. But hey, you're right there in third, James. 845.8
A long way back.
points for you. Either way, third place is still a podium finish in my books. And what better way than to lead off this segment with two guys out of the three that are in that top three. Been a fun year. Interesting, very similar to the TFR Weekly Challenge that we've done in the past.
Mm.
And if you haven't tried out Scrummy, again, it's basically you create a lineup very similar to your overseas type European style fantasy rugby that you've seen, where you pick a lineup based on a salary that you had. In this case, they use Scrummy coins, and you have 130 to pick. There are a handful of guys in there that have been my absolute gems, which we'll get into here in just a bit. But overall, though, I do think there are a lot of parallels in terms of strategy that I've learned over the course of the 5 years that I've been doing the Fantasy Ruckers. I know completely different format with us being the draft style, North American style, that, but some of the philosophies and I guess ways to kind of game the fantasy ethos were definitely apparent here as I was navigating this new thing of Scrummy.
Yeah, I mean, there have been. You have to be eagle-eyed to catch them, though. You still
It is true.
have to have a look. You have to dive through, but it's a really cool way of kind of gamifying it. It kind of reminds me of exactly what you guys do with Fantasy Ruckers. You know, you just choose one player in pretty much every position. There's front row, second row, back row, halfback, center, back three. Pick a best that fit within the budget and a super sub as it is.
Yeah.
Really, really fun way, really quick and easy. Doesn't take more than 5 minutes a week, to be honest. And then you can see if you're lucky enough, like two of us, straight to win.
Just way, yeah, exactly. Just ways to put stakes in the game and
Yeah.
obviously get a fan of these players. And again, different game theory when it comes to this. Of course, with
Mm.
our draft emphasis oriented type style, you're working with the same players all season long. The way I view these types of styles, with the um European style, is it really is efficiency. That's what it comes down to. How do you get the most bang for your buck? And that's the biggest advice that I'm going to give to people out there planning to play in the championship weekend of Scrummy is get your bang for your buck. And let me tell you, there are going to be guys this week that you're going to be able to do that because these have been my two favorite teams to lean into, both the Chicago Hounds and the California Legion, to get me fantasy points. So again, going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to break down a couple players here before we wrap up this segment. All I want to say though is apparently there's going to be some new formats coming up here in this weekend, one being head to head, where you're going to be able to select one other person to be able to kind of really emphasize how we're doing that. So that's where I lend the invitation to you, James. I think we got to have a little bit of a friendly competition here.
Oh,
Once this
really?
head-to-head stuff comes out, let's do a head-to-head. Championship weekend only matters. Let's throw out the plus 900 points. Let's see who can get it done here in this championship weekend. So you and I,
Okay,
let's
you're
go
on.
head-to-head here. We'll
I'm
see how
just,
it goes.
I'm
So
looking at it right now. You're on.
all right, here we go. So we'll find out the winner here next week, and it's going to be fun. Okay, couple guys. Not going to give away too much stuff because I don't want to give James, now my arch nemesis here, despite being my co-host, too much inside information. But guys that have been a whole lot of fun to have on your roster, and we'll break this more down here in this upcoming week's Rucking Rundown episode where Maddie and I reveal our lineup for the Fantasy Ruckers squad and guys that we're really looking at as home run hitters and fantasy MVPs. MVPs though this season for me, Theo Furry. He's been a fantasy MVP for
Hmm.
the Fantasy Ruckers. He's a fantasy MVP for Scrummy as well. It is mind-boggling that this guy, who is a try machine, a guy that is the marquee hooker, plays a whole bunch of minutes for the best team in all of MLR, is still not maxed out in price. It looks like the top dollar that you can spend is 26 on some of these guys. Theo Furry has been 21 like all season long. I have been banging him home and finding a way to get him in my lineup. We talk about bang for your buck. Theo Furry, even at a Scrummy coin price of over 20, has been my go-to every single week.
Yeah, I mean that's easy. I mean, what a replacement for Dylan Fawcett, first of all. But like you get no drop off at all, and like what a season he's having. 10 tries in 11 games is dumb. Like
Yeah,
that's stupid. And I
yeah.
mean, 21 is a bit pricey considering you've only got 130, but it's gonna be worth it. Like you said, it's 5 off max. I think I've seen the same thing. 26 is the maximum.
Yeah.
21 is cheap for a play like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Then there are guys though that you do want to pay top dollar on, because there's a handful select that even at top dollar, they're still bang for your buck. And
Hmm.
that guy for me has been Gonzalo Bertranu, who I've said set as captain every single week because this guy touches the
Me too.
ball the most. 25 coins, so one off of what is supposed to be the highest. Pretty penny to pay, but at Gonzalo Bertrano, who is going to get you points every single week, it's a no-brainer for me. So really, those two guys, Theo Furry and Gonzalo Bertrano, have been my locks all season long, and a big part of why consistently every single week, you may not win every week, but they're going to at least give you a shot to be in that
Hmm.
top five, and that's exactly what you want to be in this championship weekend. And guess what? They're both playing this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, you said he's worth every single penny of the 25. You're absolutely right. And one thing I just want to throw out is if you want a real bargain bin find, Ed Timpson is 10 coins.
Yes. Yep. Had him in my lineup this week.
He's
Thank
fantastic.
you.
He's got the
Yeah.
most meters of any forward. He's not particularly there on tries, but he's got most defenders beaten in the league. Like that is a lot.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
but you've got to search for these steals.
He was
And
my saving grace. He was my saving grace in terms of I wanted to get
yeah,
some people in my line. Like I obviously wanted to keep Bertrand in. I wanted to keep Theo Furry in. And
the only
for
way you can
me,
find you can afford, two or three of these big money players is to find steals like that.
exactly. The other guy, and this is where it kind of gets into the game theory of what I've learned from Fantasy Ruckers. Positions there are certain positions that are more valuable
I know exactly
in
where you're going with
Fantasy
this.
Ruckers, right? The back row position, their involvement in the offense gives them the upper hand in, let's say, a second row player. You look down the list. Oh, Mason Flesh is starting at the back row position, number 6. Oh, he's listed as a second row player in Scrummy. Into the lineup you go, because you're getting back row points at a position that tends to get less fantasy
Yeah,
points here. Um,
second
in
row
my
is,
lineup.
is where points go to die.
Yep.
Mason Flesh is probably the exception to that because even when he's at second row, he's still
Yeah.
scoring. He's up at 9 tries now. You've got to keep an eye out for these things. Now, Ryan, you've been doing fantasy for years. You
Mhm.
know what to look for. I don't really, but I'm starting to get it by playing Scrummy, and it's really satisfying when you go, oh, that's interesting. There, I'll just put that
Yeah.
in.
Exactly, exactly. The amount of times that I've had a whole bunch of screens opened up on my computer to look at, okay, here's every single lineup. All right, let's scroll through the list here. So, hey, make sure to catch this week's Rucking Rundown episode where Maddie and I help you find some of those sneaky plays as we head closer in to the final coming up this Sunday. We'll see how much our lineup changes from last week, just to give people a sneak peek. It was Theo Furry, Mason Flesh, Ed Timpson, Gonzalo Bertrano, Cash Malawia, and Duncan Matthews that was in our lineup here in the semifinals. Obviously, at least one of those will have to change with Matthews. How much does that change here coming up? I don't know. But as a fantasy MLR guy, couldn't be more excited that it's California and Chicago in the final, because I'm counting on there being a whole bunch of points, as noted in our predictions and the final score that we think is going to happen. So
What
either
should be
way,
like 14-10 or something.
yeah, I know, especially in the rain. No kidding.
Yeah.
Either way, hop on Scrummy, take us on, see if you can take down the number 1 and the number 3 players on the app this year in a championship showdown here in a partnership between the Fantasy Ruckers and Scrummy. All right, as we wrap up the episode, just want to give some final words out to thank you all for our 200th episode. Maddie, Vandy, taking the time here to give you guys a shout out. Let's hear what they have to say and what is a very momentous milestone here for the Fantasy Ruckers Show.
Fantasy Ruckers, what's up, boys? Ruck and Go, Devin here. Just want to give a big shout out to everybody. Thank you so much for being there for everything. 200 episodes is just crazy. I mean, it's been a wild ride for everybody that's been there since day one. Thank you so much, all the newcomers. You guys are what makes this, man. And thank you guys for taking over, helping ride with the show. And just this community's been something bigger, I think, than all of us could guess. So thank you for everything. And here's to some more, guys. Cheers.
How's it going, Fantasy Rucker fans? Yeah, gotta say congrats to the boys for 200 episodes. Not one, but 200. I think a bigger thanks has to go out to all the group of fans here that's been supporting us along the way. And Also got to give a big shout out to all MLR Stats and Jam Delay for hopping in and being part of this team on their 200th episode. So congrats, boys. Glad we got there, and to the fans, to the people, we appreciate you. And can't thank you guys enough. Appreciate you. 200 episodes. Let's do another 100. Let's go.
Well, always good to hear those guys' voices. Obviously, different circumstances, different changes, people moving across the country, time zone stuff, and new co-hosts, all that good stuff. Things may change within the hour that you spend with us on the Fantasy Ruckers, but either way, the content does not stop. And having James on board, I think, only makes it better and better. So thank you, James, for all that you have done over the course of the past few weeks, and excited to wrap up the MLR 2026 season with you here. And again, just want to give a shout out. James will be there in Chicago. Make sure you say hi to him. And again,
absolutely, please do.
Pod, we are all going to be experiencing the final vicariously through James, as we all sit at the edge of our seats on the couch watching this big time Sunday matchup between Chicago and California. So it's all good. All good. Going to be exciting. All right. Hey, Rucking Rundown episode coming up this week. James, a pleasure to always have you on. Safe travels out to the Midwest. And we'll be excited to hear everything you have to say about your finals experience.
I'm sure I'll have plenty to say.
There you go. We'll hear it next week. All right. For Matt Yee, for Devin Vandy Vanderbilt, for James Deeley, and myself, Ryan Yee, we'll see you later this week on another episode of the Fantasy Ruckers Show.
You've been listening to the Fantasy Ruckers Show, bringing fantasy rugby to the masses, covering everything rugby from the MLR and beyond. We hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and be sure to tell all your friends. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, connect with us on social media at the Fantasy Ruckers. Till next time, this is the Fantasy Ruckers Show, signing off.